At 11:47 p.m., a 911 dispatcher named Karen Ellis answered a call from a quiet street in Maple Ridge, Ohio. No one spoke. For most dispatchers, a silent call is routine. A pocket dial, a child playing with a phone. But Karen had been trained differently. She'd learned that sometimes silence is the loudest thing a person can say. She didn't hang up. She listened. And on the other end of that line, she heard breathing. Careful, controlled, deliberate. This is the story of that call, and the woman who couldn't say a single word to save her own life, but did anyway. Her name, for the purposes of this story, was Rachel Moss, 32 years old, a dental hygienist, a mother of one. By every account, Rachel was the kind of woman neighbors described as the reliable one. She organized the block's holiday potluck. She dropped off soup when someone was sick. She was, as one former coworker put it, someone who noticed when other people were struggling, long before she'd ever admit she was struggling herself. 3 years earlier, Rachel had remarried. Her new husband, Daniel, was well-liked at first, charming at barbecues, generous with compliments in public. But those close to Rachel began to notice something else. She stopped coming to the potlucks. She stopped answering texts as quickly. She started wearing long sleeves in July. Nobody said anything. That's not unusual. That's the pattern. That's how so many of these stories begin. Not with a scream, but with a slow, quiet disappearance from a person's own life. On the night of the call, neighbors later said they'd heard raised voices from the Moss house. Not the first time, but the loudest. Then, silence. A third tap. This one immediate. Karen didn't need words. She had everything she needed. She flagged the call as an active domestic emergency and began coordinating dispatch. Quietly, without a single spoken confirmation from the caller, because Karen understood something critical. On the other end of that line, silence wasn't confusion. It was survival. At 11:47 p.m., Rachel picked up the landline in her kitchen. She didn't dial a friend. She didn't dial her sister. She dialed 911. And then she said nothing at all. Dispatcher Karen Ellis had worked over 6 years in emergency response. She'd taken thousands of hang-up calls. But this one felt different. The line was open. Someone was there. So instead of following the standard script, "Hello, this is 911, do you need help?" Karen tried something else. She'd been trained in what dispatchers call the "Can you press 1" protocol, a method rolled out in departments across the country, specifically for domestic violence situations where speaking isn't safe. Karen said calmly, "If you can't talk right now, tap your phone once for yes." A pause. Then, a single faint tap. Karen's pulse spiked, but her voice stayed level. She asked follow-up questions built for exactly this moment. "Is someone with you?" Tap once for yes. Another tap. "Are you in danger right now?" A third tap. This one immediate. Karen didn't need words. She had everything she needed. She flagged the call as an active domestic emergency and began coordinating dispatch. Quietly, without a single spoken confirmation from the caller, because Karen understood something critical. On the other end of that line, silence wasn't confusion. It was survival. Officers were dispatched without sirens, a deliberate choice. Lights and noise can escalate a volatile situation inside a home before help even reaches the door. When they arrived, they found the front door unlocked. Rachel was in the kitchen, phone still in hand, visibly shaken but physically able to speak the moment officers were inside. Daniel was in the next room. He would later tell responding officers that it had just been an argument that got a little loud. No weapon, No visible sign, he claimed, of anything more. But Rachel's silence on that call, and the pattern behind it, told investigators a different story. Because domestic violence cases rarely announce themselves in a single incident. They're built from a pattern, and that night, the silent call became the first piece of documented evidence in what had, until then, been an invisible one. In the weeks that followed, investigators pulled prior neighbor complaints that had never been formally filed. They found a pharmacy record for a wrist injury Rachel had explained away as a fall. They found a coworker willing to finally say, on record, what she'd suspected for over a year. None of it, on its own, would have been enough. But it didn't have to stand on its own. It stood behind one 3-minute phone call in which a woman said nothing and told them everything. Here's the part of the story most people don't expect. Rachel didn't leave the courthouse a victim in the way true crime stories often frame it. She became, in the months that followed, one of the loudest advocates for the very protocol that had saved her. She began speaking, publicly, deliberately, in the same voice she hadn't been able to use that night, about what's now known in many 911 systems as silent call procedures, the text to 911 option, the tap once for yes method, tools that exist in more and more call centers specifically because women like Rachel proved they were necessary. What makes this case remarkable isn't just that Karen Ellis, a dispatcher hundreds of feet away, correctly read a silence and acted on it. It's that this kind of training, this exact protocol, has since been credited with helping identify domestic violence emergencies in call centers across multiple US states, precisely because so many callers, like Rachel, physically cannot speak in the moment they need help the most. The system worked because someone built it to work for silence, not despite it. Daniel was charged and later convicted on domestic violence-related counts. Rachel, in the years since, rebuilt her life, this time on her own terms. She still keeps that story close, not because of what happened to her, but because of the 7 seconds it took for a stranger, a dispatcher she never met face-to-face, to understand a silence for exactly what it was. If there's one thing this case leaves behind, it's this. Help doesn't always sound like a scream. Sometimes it sounds like nothing at all. A single tap, a breath, an open line. If you or someone you know may be in danger, know that many 911 systems today are trained to recognize a silent call as exactly what it is, a call for help. In the US, you can also reach the National Domestic Violence Hotline at 1-800-799-7233 or text START to 88788. If this story affected you, subscribe for more real, respectfully told true crime cases every week. And let me know in the comments, did you know the tap once for yes protocol was real?